the friendship is sharing deal.
Because I want one of your McNuggets.
And I need some of your Quarter Pounder.
There's a deal for everyone at McDonald's. Get one favorite like 10-piece chicken McNuggets, a Quarter Pounder, or a Big Mac, and get another for just $1. Price and participation may vary. Valid for item of equal or lesser value.
Luxury is meant to be livable. Discover the new leather collection at Ashley with premium quality leather sofas, recliners, and more, all built to last. No matter how many spills, scuffs, or pet-related mishaps come its way, the leather collection at Ashley is made with the durability you need for the whole family. Shop the new leather collection at Ashley and find chairs starting at $499.99 and sofas at $599.99. Ashley, for the love of home.
This is Kathy from Chicago. Get exclusive podcasts and more at patreon.com/partners in crime media, just like I do.
I'm Rebecca Lavoie, and this is Crime Writers On. Crime Writers On is the original true crime review podcast that digs into true crime, pop culture, other podcasts, TV, and this week we Netflix and chill. First, his conviction for killing a Boston detective 20 years ago was overturned. Can he make the case that dirty cops set him up? We'll discuss the documentary Trial 4. Then, a Kentucky orphan battles her own demons on her quest to beat the Soviets and become the greatest chess player in the world. We'll talk about the Queen's Gambit. Join me to get that done and more is my real-life husband and true crime co-author, former TV journalist, and guy whose body makes funny noises, Kevin Flynn. Hello, Kevin.
Yo, ready for this? Girl.
Dun, 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 dun. Yeah, we're ready to rumble. Along with us is journalist, true crime author, former defense investigator, licensed private investigator, and certified cat lady, Lara Bricker. Hello, Lara.
Good evening. And in one more week, Rebecca, you might be invited to the virtual graduation ceremony for Cat Detective School.
Oh, can we make that a Patreon exclusive?
Well, you guys know we don't have a podcast next week. So now we're not taping next week because it's Thanksgiving week.
Okay.
So we have bandwidth if it's like on a Wednesday night or some shit. Although the night before Thanksgiving, maybe not so convenient.
The night before Thanksgiving?
That's right. Finally,
That's when all the best pet detectives are graduating.
Finally,
they're saving the turkeys.
Finally, our captain of woke cynicism, the author behind the noir novels known as the City Trilogy, host of the Strange Arrivals podcast about UFOs, and our Patreon book club host, Toby Ball. Hello, Toby.
Hi, Rebecca. I'm preparing myself emotionally for what's about to happen.
Yeah, it's going to be a smackdown. So, Lara Bricker, question to you real quick before we start. So, are you doing like finals right now in Pet Detective School?
No, I'm in my last unit of study right now, which is, I thought it was a few weeks ago, but now my last unit is actually forensics and predators. So that's what I'm in right now. So I'm looking at some gruesome pictures, learning about using like luminol to detect blood and some other things, and watching lots of videos of wild animals attacking cats.
Does this mean you're going to have to buy luminol?
Possibly. I'm kind of interested in that. And like a few weeks ago, I learned about this like giant listening device that I could order. So there's a lot of tools of the trade that I'm learning about.
Sounds like tools for an imminent divorce, if you ask me.
So this is one of those jobs that's actually going to cost you a lot of money, right?
Yeah, I don't think I'm going to make any money. I'm basically a volunteer at this point.
Yeah.
We know that giant listening device is going to be used on Will.
That's true. That's true.
It totally is. Yeah. Although I don't know if I want to know what I'm going to find out if I do that.
Well, don't bring the luminol.
I have another follow-up question, and I'm sorry to like take up so much of our time talking about this, but you know how in like real life forensics there are like bullshit non-science things that get used in court, like ballistics evidence and like
teeth bite marks,
and like blood splatter evidence, stuff that's been basically disproved but still gets used in sometimes in court. What is the bullshit non-fry tested equivalent of that in pet detectivery?
All of it. All of it.
Well, no, actually the listening device, because in the first week I was told the listening device would help me hear cats that were trapped.
Yeah.
And then in week 7, I learned, well, actually that just makes the owners feel better because they really feel like we're doing something. but we've only found like one cat using the listening device. And I was like, what?
So it's the equivalent of a cat witch doctor.
Yes.
I was about to say it's like those ghost house investigations.
Yeah.
It's like a shaman. Except not like a real shaman, like one of those fake California shamans.
Ghost Adventures.
Yeah. Ghost Adventures. Oh my God, Ghost Adventures. That
Ghost
show.
Facers.
Oh my God. What's that? Is it Ghost Adventures that the kids watch?
Yeah.
With
Ghost
Zach
Adventures.
Bagans.
Yes.
Who's basically the Payne Lindsay of TV, who like goes into houses.
Paranormal.
Yeah, basically he goes into houses and like, no offense, Payne. I know he doesn't listen to this podcast, but this guy is the Payne Lindsay of TV. He goes into houses with all of these like all this equipment and all this whole crew, and they capture audio, and then later they're like, on this audio you can clearly hear the ghost say, "Get out!" And they play the audio, and it sounds like. let's play it again in slow motion, shall we? Clearly, it says "Get out." I have chills. I bet that Toby is a big believer in the paranormal search for ghosts in haunted buildings. Aren't you, Toby?
100%. Everywhere I look.
We don't call you the captain of woke cynicism for nothing.
Nope, I'm not cynical about ghosts.
You believe in ghosts?
No, I don't actually believe in ghosts.
Season 2 of Strange Arrivals.
I couldn't keep up the facade.
Ghost Town. All right, let's start the podcast, shall we?
Let's do it.
Leading off.
We have a report of a Boston officer who's been shot. I'm inclined to identify him at this point, but we do know that he suffered a gunshot wound to the face. We understand that the officer is dead at this time, and there is an unconfirmed report that his firearm is missing.
In 2015, Sean Ellis won the right to a new trial more than 20 years after being convicted of murdering a Boston cop in front of a Walgreens. What was at first believed to be an execution-style slaying of Detective John Mulligan shifted once Ellis mentioned to police that he bought diapers at that store on the night of the killing.
They asked me again, I took them through it. They asked me again, I took them through it. But each time that I took them through it, it's like they was getting madder and madder.
What the defense didn't know at Ellis's first 3 trials was Mulligan was a dirty cop. His partners in narcotics took over the homicide case, providing evidence and witnesses that conveniently kept scrutiny away from their own illegal activity.
For my 4th trial, I want to be vindicated. I want to be exonerated. But I won't be the only one that's on trial. The Boston police will be on trial.
In Netflix's Trial 4, Ellis and his defense attorney prepare to go back to court and prove he was railroaded to quickly close a high-profile case that would have exposed police corruption. With the whole system stacked against him, can Ellis win exoneration for a crime he says he didn't commit? Spoiler alert, we are going to totally fucking spoil Trial 4. So if you want to remain spoiler-free, go to the estimated time code in our show notes for our thumbs up or thumbs down review. All right. Lara Bricker, question for you.
Yes.
In Trial 4, we are introduced to a defense attorney named Rosemary Scarpaccio. Listen, we have a defendant, we have a crime, we've got corrupt cops, we've got Boston, we've got the whole thing. Well, let's just go straight to Rosemary Scarpaccio, who I think might be exactly what we need in 2020 to fill that Rosemary Scarpaccio-shaped hole in our lives. Lara Bricker, what did you think about Rosemary Scarpaccio?
I think if I ever get in trouble for anything, I am calling her. And I loved her. Oh my God. She was such a badass advocate for her clients. Like when she had that one detective on the stand and he was trying to give her the runaround and she just kept after him. And she's like, yeah, we have some history. I know what he's up to.
It became clear from co-defendants that that man sitting at the table there, Sean Ellis, was responsible for the murder of John Mulligan.
You want to stop that? Were you there that night, Detective Keeler?
I was there. I examined Detective.
Were you there when the shots were fired?
No, but
so you have no idea who fired those shots, do you?
Oh, I have a very good idea of who fired
you weren't
those shots.
there, Detective, were you?
No, ma'am.
Okay, so you have no idea what happened because you weren't there.
Ma'am.
You only know it was reported to you after the fact.
She was amazing. So, we have had other defense attorneys that we have been like, these are great, but she's like a pit bull. Like she is not going to stop And she just kept on going, and she had heart. Like, she really cared about Sean and his case. And I loved when she was having her little Italian dinner with her family, and she's like, I need some wine. I'm like, yes, you do, Rosemary. No, she was fucking awesome. And the fact that, like, then you learned about her history, and she's grown up in the projects, and you hear about, she understands where the clients were coming from. And I would use the word scrappy to describe kind of the way that she just continued to pursue becoming a lawyer and didn't let go.
Kevin, thoughts on Rosemary Scarpaccio?
Oh, I also love that scene when she was doing the cross-examination. I think she is, the kind of defense attorney everybody would want to have. And she's gotten results.
Yeah.
So, the idea that she did not back down in the face of years and years of stonewalling by the Boston police and the city and, the other entities that were withholding documents. A lot of the credit for the conviction being overturned belongs to her.
Yeah. Now, if you look at her website, which I have.
Okay.
I'm going to paraphrase. I don't have it open in front of me right now. But she is a criminal defense attorney, makes no bones about it. And her website is like, I will take your case to trial and I will win. Like that's literally what her website is. Like, she makes no bones about it. She's like, you guilty? Hire me. I will take your case
we
to
have
trial.
A couple of those around here.
Well, she's basically like, I litigate. I litigate cases. I will defend you. Like, that is her bag. Toby, what did you think of Rosemary? I want to give you a chance to weigh in on this larger-than-life character in this documentary.
I'll just point out, she was driving back from Springfield at the end when she got that call. She was covering the whole state.
Yeah.
She was 2 hours away from Boston.
She was defending maybe somebody in your family, right?
Could have been. I know who, too.
Toby, what are your thoughts on Rosemary?
Yeah, I liked her. I think Kevin and Lara have already kind of talked about sort of her great scene, which is really kind of putting this police detective on the defensive in what's a pretty, hostile back and forth between the two of them. And when they talk to, I'm not going to remember the guy's name, but there's a retired police officer who seemed like he was pretty high up in the ranks, who they talked to quite a bit over the course of the series. Like, he has nothing but disdain for her. Like, he thinks she's trying to get her name in the papers and stuff. When I was watching her, like, that's the kind of lawyer I would like to have, rather than like Kathleen Zellner and like her wacky like experiments and, tromping around. Rosemary seems like she kind of, she works the system. She files her FOIA requests and, waits them out and follows up and, eventually justice grinds and she gets what she wants. One of the many interesting things about this documentary is watching her kind of go about her business, knowing that this is one of probably a number of cases she's got sort of juggling at the same time, although probably the most high profile one.
I want to talk a little bit about the background to this case, because Sean Ellis finds himself at the center of this murder case of a cop who, by the way, does look a little bit like Crazy Toby. Just going to throw it out there. One of our listeners pointed that out, and I'm like, oh, I wish you hadn't said that. Anyway.
If Toby wore a patrolman's cap in a black and white photo.
But it really is like fiction. This case is like, it could be like, it's like The Departed, right, Kevin? Like, it's not even like a real, it feels so...
The crime itself is really interesting. I will tell you, without giving away where I'm going, that this is one of the few documentaries where I actually wanted to watch it again. In particular, episode 1, where they lay out the crime, because it's so interesting, sort of the way it unfolds. But right, it's a cop who's on a private detail, so he's essentially off duty but on duty, looking for hoping there's no trouble at Walgreens at 3 a.m. when people are buying diapers, and he's either asleep in the car or he's relaxing because somebody's giving him a blowjob, because maybe his pants were around his ankles. We don't know. If the prosecution's theory is that Sean and Terry Patterson, his friend who was also arrested, wanted to murder this cop for his gun. First of all, he's not in uniform.
And he's not in a patrol car.
He's not in a patrol car.
Right.
How do you know he's a cop? How do you know he has a gun?
Right.
And then the idea that the window is cracked just this much, and so you're going to stick your hand all the way in to put the gun right up to his face, as opposed to their original theory, which was somebody sat in the car next to him and shot him close up in the face, execution style.
Listen, I'm not a ballistics expert, but I have fired a handgun once in my life. And I can tell you right now where those cartridges landed, like the person was sitting in the car. Like the person was sitting, like it's so obvious. There's a cartridge to the right of the passenger seat and there's cartridges behind the passenger seat. And Kevin, you know from firing a gun that like the cartridge goes up.
Yeah, it bounces all around.
But like, I have slow motion footage of us shooting a handgun and it flies over your shoulder or it flies off to the right.
It doesn't generally, it can bounce anyway, especially in a closed surface, but it doesn't usually fly forward.
Right.
It might careen forward or something like that, bounce off of stuff. But everything was to the passenger side.
Yeah. Toby, are you surprised by the brazen extent of the corruption of just the officers we hear about in this documentary? So we have Mulligan, we have that guy Brazel, the third guy is...
Walter Mitty.
Yes.
What's his actual...
Robinson, yeah. Sarah and Brazel, and this guy. And their corruption, it was not even like... It wasn't subtle. It wasn't like, hey, once in a while I'm going to do a drug bust and take a couple $100. Like, they were shaking
It was like
people.
The Shield.
They were shaking people down. They were running their own businesses. The guy owned like 18 apartments and drove around like a sports car.
I love the investigation where they ranked all the money found at the different precincts. And 90% of the money, the drug bust, there was money, and 95% of this one, there's only 20% of the drug bust, there was money.
Right.
That's a sort of sub-theme of this is like more good reporting by the Boston Globe.
Yeah, absolutely. But I mean, you're probably not surprised. What did you think of the extent to which this little gang of cops was corrupt?
Well, I think you were right when you said before that it seems like fiction. Like it does seem like a Dennis Lehane novel. It's kind of almost a cliche. It's like if you rob like a drug dealer, who are they gonna go to? And then when you're a cop yourself, that makes it doubly unlikely that they're going to do anything about it. So yeah, I mean, I guess it was just a matter of they didn't think that they could be touched, right? And for the most part, they couldn't. I don't think unless this had happened. It didn't seem like there was anything that was going to necessarily stop them. Like even that Boston Globe report didn't really lead to anything, and they still get defended by other cops who are on the force at the time as being not particularly dirty.
Toby, as I recall, the U.S. attorney read the Boston Globe article. And he said, that they were like, oh, that's interesting.
When I picked up my copy of the Boston Globe, and there was a spotlight series on Detectives Walter Robinson and Detectives Kenneth Sarah, that was quite eye-opening to us.
We also heard from another cop who was in the anti-corruption unit, which is not internal affairs. He said, and I think this was the truest thing that any cop said in the whole thing was, we know who the dirty cops are.
Yeah.
So it's like, well, I don't know, Mulligan, there was never a proof. It's like, man, he's got like the most amount of complaints against him. Of course you know he's dirty.
Yeah.
You know he's dirty.
At the very least, he's a fucking terrible cop.
Yeah.
Well, and I think and the euphemisms they use for him at the beginning.
Yeah.
His nickname was Plainview because whenever he would file reports about making an arrest, the drugs were in plain view, the gun was in plain view, everything was in plain view. Because if it's in plain view, you don't have to get a warrant. That was among his friends, that's what the cops called them.
And then one of them had to retire and whatever. Although whatever happened to Brazel? He seems like, he turned evidence.
Yeah, he got immunity.
It's all coming back to me now. So I thought it did. It read like fiction. The one thing I would say that you were talking about before is like, how would they know that he was a cop? Because he wasn't in a vehicle and he wasn't. It seemed like he was like a known guy, right, in the neighborhood, and that he's getting girls to come see him, and I assume he's probably getting drugs delivered to him or whatever. So,
but how would Sean Ellis know that? I mean, obviously, there's a lot of fucked up things. Yeah,
there's a funny, like one of the things they do is that they do kind of hint at the fact, they don't even hint at it, but it's a very small part of it, is that Sean you know, he was dealing drugs on the street before he got arrested. So I don't think he was like necessarily naive. You know, it was obviously fairly near where he lived, if that's where they're going to get diapers.
Lara, your thoughts on the corrupt cops in this documentary?
What struck me about this is that some things never changed, because this was back in like 93?
Yep.
They're double dipping, you know, they're running this scheme. And I'm like, wasn't it like only like maybe 2 or 3 years ago that we had the Mass State Police doing the exact same thing? And they had to shut down like an entire barracks somewhere in Massachusetts. So I think that in this case, what enraged me about the corrupt cops was the fact that they were all still freaking covering for each other.
Yes.
So I was like yelling at that freaking old guy cop, the one who was like the head homicide detective.
The white
like
hair guy. Mr. Punch Face.
Sorry, Kevin. The old Irish detective guy.
That's fine.
I was like, fuck him. I was so angry at him when I was watching this, because he's like, you know, like everything's great. Everything's fine. He's still guilty. And like, yeah, Mulligan may have been this, but we didn't do anything wrong.
It was a clean case. They call it a clean arrest, a clean
Clean as the snow.
Mulligan's case is as clean as the new snow. That's how clean that case is. There's not one issue with it. I mean, I supervised that case. There's no women involved. There's no conspiracy. There's no corruption angle. There is nothing.
They were brought on charges. Like, they were found out. And yet they're still carrying the company line of like, oh yeah, it's fine. I was just like, every time that guy came. And that other guy, the other one that had like the glasses that was in a hotel room.
Also very punchable.
Yes. So anyway.
Kevin, I don't want to like belabor our attention on the victim in this case, who by all like accounts was a giant piece of shit. I also think he was a pedophile. What do you think?
You mean a phoebophile?
Let's not get technical, shall we? But
Let's define our terms.
There is another theory of the crime, which is, first of all, we hear from lots of people that he liked
young teen girls.
And there's another theory of the crime that he was killed by another cop whose daughter he was messing with. And that other cop apparently told somebody. And there's this whole other theory of the case. What do you think of this idea that A, Mulligan had a lot going on just besides being a piece of shit cop who's shaking people down? He was also like a piece of shit person. And that there was this other theory of the crime that was never explored, probably because the other suspect was a cop, right?
Yeah, well, yes, or it wasn't explored because Sean Ellis was the perfect patsy.
Yeah.
To take the fall on this, and that was what they wanted to do. I think that, of course, that kind of information should have been disclosed to the defense, and it's part of the reason why the conviction was overturned. I think ultimately, you know, I'm not feeling very strongly that it's was it One-Eye Captain Jack or whatever the guy's custodian's name was, or this cop, only because I feel like Mulligan's service weapon is the key to the whole mystery.
Yeah,
because, you know, if there's a theory that, no, it wasn't Ellison, it wasn't these dirty cops, it was a serial killer who just came along, you know, third party, that could be out there, except for the fact that whoever had the gun, whoever took the gun from the car, planted it across the street from Sean's house.
Very clearly planted it.
And, of course, that could also be the serial killer. Oh, if this guy's in the paper, okay, I'm going to drop this by his house. But how did that tip get to the cops? Right? It came through this triumvirate of filthy cops that, like, okay, they don't have any suspects. All of a sudden, one of the dirty cops comes up with a suspect, and they don't have a cell phone. But all of a sudden, one of the dirty cops finds a cell phone, and they don't. I mean, it's like these dirty cops, narcotics cops. Remember, we didn't even point out the fact they're not homicide detectives.
Right?
They're his partners in narcotics that everybody already knows is dirty, and they've decided to step up this investigation and start coming up with eyewitnesses and stuff like that. That's the key, obviously. Right. And if they're going to say, well, the girlfriend's fingerprint was on the gun, I never believed the fingerprint evidence.
Well, it ended up not matching. Remember they said it ended up not even matching Terry Peterson's fingerprints.
On the door, years later,
Yeah, so I have a question for you, Kevin. This is like an aside. We've had a lot of debates in our household about how Jay knew where the car was in the serial case.
That's exactly what I was thinking.
Does this not make you believe a little bit? The cops knew where the car was, and they told Jay where to help them find it.
Well, without getting back into Serial, I would just say that I don't...
Same kind of cops,
but
though.
I don't know the motive for withholding that information and giving it to a...
Right, because they had a suspect, and they wanted to wrap it quickly. And that's how dirty cops work. They want to wrap it quickly, so they make it happen. That is the whole point of this fucking documentary.
We can talk about that another time. Let's talk about trial 4. Let's talk about Sean Ellis. It's a crime we haven't started talking about.
Yeah, and we need to talk about the huge theme of this documentary, which is a huge theme of a lot of things that we talk about. But in Boston, it is particularly salient. The theme of race and how the criminal justice system is just different for people who are black. The cops are all white. Toby, you pointed out in your notes that Sean Ellis is practically the only person in this whole film that's black.
Yeah. I mean, the cops are white. The lawyers are white. The judges are white. His friend who writes the op-ed piece that gets a lot of attention, she's white. The only other black person who plays much of a role is the new DA is black. And I think that may kind of complicate things a little bit. I think the racial optics probably did not help Sean in that particular case. But yeah, so I mean, he's basically navigating or not navigating a system that's run, part and parcel by white people. And, you can draw your own conclusions about what that means for his experience and the outcomes.
Now, Lara, Sean Ellis obviously was a big participant in the making of this film. He's in it. He's sort of one of the central figures in it. He gives a lot of interviews. You sort of see him going about his life. He sort of, after he finally gets out of prison on bail, it's on bail, right, Kevin? He's now working with the Innocence Project. He has a job at a nonprofit. I'm curious, just what are your general impressions of Sean Ellis?
Well, I like in the beginning that we get the window into the fact that he was a stutterer when he was younger. We obviously see his hat, Stutta, with his nickname there. So I think that we, see somebody who's very involved in his case in an appropriate way. I dealt with defense clients who were perhaps not involved in a way that he was, that weren't supporting the attorney or the investigators. And he's, polite, he's involved, he's engaged, and, he wants to do the right thing. And I think, we see him out in the community, and we see him at his job, and we see him interacting with his partner and his mother and buying, the house that they're going to move into. And I just... I think he comes across as a very sympathetic and compelling character because, when you see him living his life, you see why that woman is writing the op-ed, because he does not come across as somebody that committed this crime. I think when you actually see him out and about.
Yeah. I mean, let's be real. A lot of awful people are also railroaded and wrongfully convicted. Sean Ellis is not one of those awful people. Sean Ellis is a good person. And I have to say, there is something about his manner of speaking. The stutter in particular gives him a very sort of childlike quality, even though he's not childlike in any other way, that immediately, you feel something for him that other documentaries like this. I mean, we didn't hear from Curtis Flowers in the Dark at all until after he finally got bail, right? So he was a character in the background that we knew almost nothing about, never heard from, never heard his voice. Kevin, it makes a difference when you meet the defendant right at the start and you are doing a ride along with them and participating in their defense, right?
Yeah, I mean, one of the things about this documentary is it had both a feel of In the Dark, because we're going on to trial 4 now, but also it shares some DNA with The Staircase.
Yes, it does. It actually shares some DNA with The Staircase.
Somebody in the production crew
Lestrade, who is the executive producer of this, was the director of The Staircase.
Right.
Jean-Xavier Lestrade.
This was when I realized that, this case was done, and there was either a trial or there was some finality to the case, and I was praying that I would not find out before it was done, before I was done watching it. And I hadn't felt that way since The Staircase. I was like, please, I asked you, I said, you know what happened, right?
I looked it up. I couldn't.
And I said, do not tell me, do not tell me, do not tell me. So it does have some of that. And Sean, immediately becomes relatable. And, while someone's demeanor is not indicative of their actual ability to commit a violent crime
or not, yeah.
It certainly doesn't seem like this is the guy that would kill a cop randomly for his gun. It just, Rosemary said it when she met him. It just didn't seem like that was who this guy was.
Right.
And so, I think an audience, we're not members of a jury. We're not prosecutors trying to make a prosecuting decision. I think as an audience, we can say, yeah, this isn't the guy.
Yeah. So I want to talk a little bit about where the documentary turns. It gets a little bit into politics and the sort of racial history of the city of Boston, which is widely believed to be one of the most racist cities in the United States, a feeling that many of us share who live in proximity to Boston as well. And there is sort of a political history there about how the cops have been dominated by, white Irish people, and the political machine has been dominated by white Irish people, and the prosecutorial machine has been dominated by white people. And then we kind of get into a DA race that is happening during this appeal. And we get introduced to several of the candidates. And I think we're supposed to realize that whoever gets elected will determine the outcome of Sean Ellis's fate. Toby, what did you think about this documentary's turn into the politics of criminal justice? That the DA is an elected position in a city that is systemically racist, and that whoever gets elected, old school liberal, or we knew it was going to be a Democrat, right, who was going to be elected, but whoever got elected was going to, determine the outcome of Sean's case. That was a very interesting turn, I thought.
Yeah, I thought so too. It went on a little bit longer than I would have chosen to go on, but it's a clever way of bringing in some context into what's going on, and also into how Boston may or may not be changing. And I do think it kind of comes down to it. And another weird thing, I kept trying to figure out what was going on. They kept showing, so there's 6 candidates, but they only show 3 of them ever talking. The other 3 are just stage dressing. But it does seem to come down to sort of an old school, sort of more conservative Democrat, the guy who the outgoing DA is sort of handpicked, or this woman who's is sort of the new face of Boston. She's got an Irish dad and her mom's from the Barbados, and so she's mixed race.
She's the new Black Irish, Toby Ball.
I'm the product of a second-generation Irishman, Vietnam veteran, my mother's first generation from Barbados. This is the new Black Irish. Get used to it.
And she's much more liberal, and I think the idea you're supposed to be getting is that for Sean's future, you really want her to win. She seems to be the one who's most likely to look favorably on his case. So they do a good job of getting you kind of in her corner. They do spend quite a bit of time on the race, and not always in ways that I thought were particularly interesting. But be that as it may, I can see why they did it. I just wish they'd done it for a little bit less time.
Kevin?
Yeah, I 100% agree. I feel like that episode was not necessary. I think a lot of that ground could have been covered in 10 minutes of something else. It's important because, as you guys know, that the DA holds a lot of power, and ultimately her election changes the course of Sean Ellis's case. But, following her moving into her house and stuff like that.
That was surprising to me. Were you surprised they had that access? I was.
Well, yeah. I mean,
that was very staircase.
I think if she's I'm the new DA, and we're a documentary team doing stuff on Sean Ellis. Well, come on in. It's she's I wait till I throw the book at him. That's just not going to happen, right? Yes, I'm already emotionally invested in everybody else. I don't need a new character in the 7th episode to come in and now I'm really care about you. I don't.
It almost felt like they were making a parallel film, and they decided to include some of that footage in this film. Yeah. That was the one sort of diversion. Yeah. But the way that it comes into play, Lara, is that she wins, and Rachel Rollins, and the outgoing DA, the outgoing administration. So she basically says she plans to take a look at the case. They decide to dismiss the charges in the case, but they do it in such a way that they basically say, we know he did it, but we can't prove it.
Of all the people in all the world who might have killed John Mulligan. Only they were present at the time and place he was killed. By their own admission, supported by eyewitnesses in physical evidence.
What did you think of that, Lara?
It pissed me off because it was like clear that they were doing that because they knew that if somebody else, I mean, I felt like if she came in, she probably would have dismissed the case and she probably would have been a little bit more like, there's some questions about the guilt in this case. The police were corrupt. This gave them the opportunity to continue holding the line that the police investigation was done correctly, that the corrupt police didn't mess up this investigation, and that Sean Ellis was guilty. So it was like one of these things I felt like horrible because it's like, he's out and then that's great. So, because like, can you imagine if he had gotten out on bail and had to go back to jail? How awful that would have been. So he's out, but he has this cloud hanging over him because they've tainted his reputation by holding on to this, he's guilty, but we're dismissing the case. I'm like, you're so foolish. Like, I was just like, no.
Guilty of being a cop killer, which is not nothing to be accused of being guilty of.
Yeah.
Well, Lara, you know what I would have done? Of course, you know, these cops, it's their last fuck you, because they know that the whole thing is we have to do this now because she's just going to completely dump the case and maybe exonerate him. This is our only way of getting one last lick in. That's a whole PR move. And if I were Rosemary, I would have pointed out the fact that the following day, all this discovery material was supposed to come out. Even though you don't really know what's going in, I would have said to the press, well, they dropped the case because tomorrow they were supposed to give me also all these documents that they've been hiding for 20 years. And I know it would have proven that every cop in Boston was in on this and the heavens would fall and blah, blah, blah. And two can play that game.
Yeah. So I just want to talk a little bit about the look, though, because one of the interesting things that happens that the documentary doesn't linger on, but I certainly noticed it. So we meet Rachel Rollins, the brand new DA. She's moving into her house. That chief of police guy, was he the chief of police? Commissioner of police is helping her. And we're sort of getting the sense that she's going to look at the case. She's going to be very liberal. That same police commissioner is at that press conference throwing Sean Ellis under the bus. And then we see Rachel Rollins in an interview. I want to say, like, pussyfooting around the issue. She's not willing to just like say they were wrong to do that. She's like, well, I may look at it, whatever. You can tell the politics of the job have already taken hold a little bit. Like her passionate, progressive nature already had some of the edges smoothed off of it that quickly after being elected, because you sort of see this allegiance she had with the commissioner and then you know what I mean? I thought that was interesting and sad in some ways. But yeah, so just a quick round table. Does anyone besides me think that another cop killed Mulligan?
I would go that way. Yeah.
Another cop, or at least somebody he screwed over in his corruption as a cop?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think so too. What do you think, Lara?
Yeah, no, I think it was somebody he screwed over, definitely. Because, I mean, we haven't even gotten into, like, the best. I love the defense investigator who found that witness, Misty, the woman who was like, yeah, I was kind of glad because I was sick of giving him blowjobs. That woman.
Yes.
Were you surprised that he was murdered?
I wasn't surprised he was murdered. He wasn't, like I said, he wasn't very liked. And he was somebody always thought he was setting them up.
I mean, clearly this guy was just a jerk. So I think that he made enough enemies that certainly Sean Ellis buying Pampers was not the person that did this.
All right. I think we should do what we do. Let's let our listeners know, should they check out Trial 4 on Netflix? Thumbs up or thumbs down? Lara Bricker, what do you think?
I'm going to go thumbs up. You know, I love when we watch something that kind of happens in our own backyard, and, you know, seeing the Boston Globe involved in this, thinking of obviously Spotlight and you know, that whole series, and then seeing the reporters that were involved in the police corruption here. And this is, you know, you've got a great defense attorney. You've got a very sympathetic defendant. You've got a lot of great characters. It did drag on a little bit in the middle, but overall, I really like this.
Toy Ball, what about you? Thumbs up or thumbs down for Trial 4?
Yeah, I'm a thumbs up. I sort of agree with Lara. I felt like the first maybe 5 episodes were really compelling. And then I think I feel like it slows way down. Yeah, so I give it a thumbs up. And it's a very strong thumbs up for the first part. And then, you know, the last third, like, just sort of a more lukewarm thumbs up.
I just want to give a shout out to not only our Boston Globe reporters featured in this documentary, but so is excellent investigative reporter Philip Martin from my sister public radio station, WGBH in Boston. It was very nice to see public radio represented in one of these documentaries. Kevin, what about you? Thumbs up or thumbs down for Trial 4 on Netflix?
Oh, I'm thumbs up for public radio, Rebecca. Look, I'm thumbs up on this. I think it's really great. By the way, I dig the animation as a way to do the recreations.
This is like the second thing in a row that there's been animation in.
But it was also like really good.
Yeah.
It was really good animation. Look, I think it's an interesting case that isn't afraid to tackle race and the institutions of law enforcement, whether it's in the city of Boston or writ large. This kind of thing happens all over the U.S., unfortunately. And to think about the many convenient suspects that were, made patsies in order to close a case or to push suspicion towards someplace else. So this is something that, I would watch it a second time. I think that it's really that good.
I liked Trial 4 more than I liked pretty much everything else we've watched this year. I loved this documentary. I don't have the same issues you guys did with the pacing because I needed that break. I think it's episode 6 that really gets into the politics. I needed the break. Episodes 1 through 5, I was on the edge of my seat. It was super intense. Rosemary Scarpaccio had me slapping me in the face with justice. And I actually needed emotionally an episode that sort of took me out of the case for a few minutes and gave me some background because I think the pacing really worked there. And it also really put Boston in the spotlight as a character. I mean, Boston is another character in this story. Cities in general are a character, but Boston in particular. And I don't know. I think Trial 4 is the best thing on Netflix right now. I've been telling everybody I know to watch it. I think it's a masterpiece. I think it compares favorably with the first season, the first original episodes of The Staircase in its internal look at a defense. I loved almost everything about this documentary. I could not give it a more enthusiastic thumbs up.
Want the same expert advice you get from the pros in the store while shopping online at DiscountTire.com? Meet Treadwell, your personal online tire guide that matches you with the perfect tire for your vehicle. Get your best match in 1 minute or less with Treadwell by Discount Tire.
The friendship is sharing deal.
Because I want one of your McNuggets.
And I need some of your Quarter Pounder.
There's a deal for everyone at McDonald's. Get one favorite like 10-piece chicken McNuggets, a Quarter Pounder, or a Big Mac and get another for just $1. Price and participation may vary. Valid for item of equal or lesser value.
Luxury is meant to be livable. Discover the new leather collection at Ashley with premium quality leather sofas, recliners, and more, all built to last. No matter how many spills, scuffs, or pet-related mishaps come its way, the leather collection at Ashley is made with the durability you need for the whole family. Shop the new leather collection at Ashley and find chairs starting at $499.99 and sofas at $599.99. Ashley, for the love of home.
All right, Kevin, here we are in the business section of the podcast.
It's business time.
That's not how the song goes. You know how it goes.
Oh, ready?
Yeah, there you go. So, Kevin, what is going on right now on our Patreon for everyone who supports us at patreon.com/Partners in Crime Media?
In your feed right now is the Crime Writers on After Show.
What are we talking about?
We haven't talked about it yet, so I don't know.
Yeah, we're talking about, we're going to excuse Toby because we hasn't watched it, and we're going to talk about The Crown.
And I think we got to talk a little more about Laura Bricker, Pet Detective.
Yes, we do.
We have a new episode of Married with Podcast. We take a whole bunch of questions.
It's a good episode.
Including a question about someone's mom who won't keep secrets.
That's right. Indiscreet mama.
Yes. And a listener who has not been feeling well and just can't understand why her boyfriend can't get it in his head that she doesn't want to
do
put
it.
In.
Yeah. She needs to kick him in the you-know-whats. Yeah, it was a really good episode of Married with Podcast. Married with Podcast, by the way, is a really good show, and you will be able to hear it, many episodes of it, like 50 episodes of it or so, if you subscribe to our Patreon, right?
Yeah, well, we've got over 150 episodes, exclusive episodes on Patreon, and they also include the upcoming Toby Ball's Deep Dive Book Club, which will be out before we come out with another Crime Writers on episode. Toby's talking about The Big Goodbye.
Oh.
Which is all about Chinatown, the movie Chinatown, and old Hollywood.
Huh.
Or the end of Hollywood.
I love Chinatown.
Or Hollywood as we used to know. I don't know. I didn't read the book, Toby will.
It's about the making of Chinatown and how that happened right as big changes were being made in the movie industry. The sort of the thesis of the book is that sort of the craft, these sort of idiosyncratic but, great movies are becoming a thing of the past and are being replaced by sort of blockbusters the way we think of them. So it's good. It's super interesting. A lot of interesting characters. I actually watched Chinatown last night to get ready for the conversation, and it holds up.
Yes.
If you haven't watched it recently, the only thing that doesn't hold up is the soundtrack is a little weird.
Yeah,
But,
you know what's amazing? It's funny. I know we're still in the business section, but you're talking about sort of like the quirkiness of Chinatown and the weirdness before the blockbuster. One of the things I remember so much about that movie is that Faye Dunaway has like pit stains like in her blouse like during the film, and it's like,
you don't remember the knife up the nose?
Well, no, I remember that too. And I remember, of course, her weird teeth. But, like, you would never see that. Clearly, it was hot when they were filming. She was sweating. She sweat through her blouse. And, like, they didn't make her change. Like, that was just in the movie because in California, like, that's what it would look like.
It's Chinatown, Rebecca.
I don't know. I love Chinatown. All right, Kevin, we've talked about all the stuff we've got going on Patreon, but quick question. Do we have any Patreon patron saints of the week this week?
Our Patreon patron saints are Alyssa Dousman and Bliss Peterson. Sharon Begara.
Wait, isn't Alyssa the yoga loft above the bodega?
Yeah, she is.
Alyssa is our, like, naming rights patron.
She is the proprietor of the yoga loft above the bodega in Bay St. Louis, Mississippi.
We have one level.
By the way, you know who lives down the street from her?
Who?
James Carville. It's like, hey, I was like, I've seen him on
that
TV.
shriveled old man.
Yeah. That guy, like, my son was like, I was watching CNN, and there's some old guy with like a half a bottle of whiskey behind him, and he's wearing like some like dirty sweatshirt.
Yes.
And I was like, I think that might have been James Carville.
James Carville today looks like James Carville got turned into a raisin. And then we have like raisin James Carville.
It's like someone put James Carville in the microwave for 30 seconds.
Someone put him in the dehydrator. Someone put him in the Instapot. This is what we have. So just so you know, for our listeners, Alyssa we have one spot in this one level in our Patreon, and that one spot, that person is allowed to have the naming rights to our studio. She's been doing it for like years.
Yeah.
She's been supporting us more than any other patron for years.
She's probably like, how come you haven't made me patron saint yet? It's like, I want to move it around a little bit, but it's it's kind of hard not to do you.
All right, Kevin, are we done with the business section?
We are.
All right,
Stop
let's
that music.
Fade out that music, shall we? Moving on.
Girls do not play chess.
That one moves up and down, or back and forth, all the way if there's space to move in. But that one can only go up. That tall one can go any way it wants.
A girl living in an orphanage is fed a diet of Christian education and daily tranquilizers until she learns to play chess from a janitor. Beth Harmon turns out to be Beth Harmon.
He's a custodian.
They
Rebecca.
call
It's
him a janitor in the thing. Beth Harmon turns out to be a prodigy, quickly climbing the ranks in a sport dominated by men.
What's the price for beginners?
20.
What about the other section?
First prize in the open is 100.
Is it against any rule for me to be in the open?
Not exactly.
Put me in the open.
Beth focuses on beating the Cold War Soviet grandmasters, but the cocktail of pills and alcohol that fuel her strategic vision threaten to take over her life.
You shouldn't be by yourself. You know what happens.
Maybe that's what I want.
What, to get drunk?
Yeah. Getting drunk. Fucking bombed. And maybe high too. Why not?
Starring Anya Taylor-Joy as Beth, the 7-part series The Queen's Gambit is a period drama about addiction, genius, feminism, communism, and lots of chess. Can our heroine conquer her demons before she conquers the Russian great standing in her way? Now, we are going to be talking about plot points for The Queen's Gambit, so to remain spoiler-free, go to the estimated time code in our show notes to hear our thumbs up or thumbs down review. Kevin, why are we reviewing the show? It's not true crime.
It's a big hit. Everybody on Facebook is asking, will you review this?
I know.
It's pop culture.
I know. So that was a fake question. Here's a real question.
Yeah.
This documentary, is it about chess or is it about addiction or is it about something else?
Well, it's a character study, I think. And it's about addiction and a woman coming into her own and, if I might be so symbolic, finding her way from being a pawn to a queen.
Okay. Lara, this is a film that has a sport at its center. The sport of kings. Chess. I know it's your favorite sport.
Horse racing is a sport of kings.
Damn it. Right.
I thought it was falconry.
Yes. But Lara Bricker, chess is at the center of this. And one of the things that occurs to me talking about it, watching it, is that we watch an awful lot of people moving pieces around a board in this film. What do you think of that?
Well, you know, it's funny. Like, who thought chess could be so exciting? Honestly, like the suspense.
Nerds did.
Well, no, Kevin, I had a chess phase. I did have a chess phase. I'm sure we all have that phase?
Yes.
Yes. And I got the chessboard and I played. And then I was like, this is just hurts my brain too much. I can't play chess anymore. But watching this, especially combined with Anya Taylor-Joy's facial expressions and her eyes and her little smirks, made watching chess so suspenseful and exciting because you could just see the level of strategy that was involved in the way that they dragged out the game. And I was just like, the whole time. And I'm like, I can't believe, is this what my life has come to in the pandemic, that chess is exciting? But clearly it is.
No, before I go to Toby, Kevin, I want you to talk about something that you talked about when we were watching this, which is the choreography of those scenes, which I didn't even think about, but it's super interesting to think about.
Yeah, because apparently all the chess moves and everything like that are accurate. In fact, the different games that they play within the movie are actual games that were played by very famous chess players. So when they move a rook to the square, it's been done before, but especially like in the speed chess, it reminds me very much of like fight choreography where you know, the actors know I'm going to throw this punch with the left, you're going to block it like this to move it all around. I thought it was really fascinating and it creates a level of authenticity that we need.
In a hyper-real, not at all authentic movie. Let's talk about this. I mean, it's not like... It's fantastical in many ways.
It's an alternate history, if you want to say it like that.
It's an alternate history, but it's also sort of has this fantastical kind of like fairy tale telling to it. And Toby, that sort of begins at the beginning when Beth becomes orphaned and she's sent to an orphanage, which, by the way, I will give the writers a lot of credit, and I know this was a book originally, so it's not just the TV writers, for not doing all the cliche shit that we expect in this orphanage. And honestly, throughout the entire series, there's a lot of cliche stuff that I expect to happen that doesn't happen. You know, you expect when a kid goes to an orphanage that looks like this orphanage looks like there's going to be like sexual abuse
Physical
or
sexual
abuse
abuse
and there's going to be, you know, unkind, you know,
dogma.
Yeah. But it isn't really that. It's just an orphanage. And we get a bunch of surprising scenes
Instead, they do tranquilizers.
They do tranquilizers. Oh, my God, Toby. I mean, I know that you have problems with this series because I saw your notes. But tell me what you thought of that scene when Beth breaks into the dispensary and we think she's just going to put some pills in her pocket. And instead she reaches into the jar, grabs a fistful of them and shoves them into her mouth. Did you find that as surprising as I did, Toby?
Yeah. Have you seen that thing on YouTube where they show that cat who just like, instead of eating like cats normally eat, where they just take a little piece and they like crunch it up. So he like opens its mouth as wide as it can and just like scoops up all this cat food. It was kind of like that. But yeah, that was, I mean, there's a lot of good scenes in this. 100%. And that was one of them. I don't know. That scene played really well on a whole bunch of different ways, I thought, in that it was somewhat suspenseful and it also got the right, I don't know. I mean, I think there's a bunch of places where they kind of got the right balance of very smart, but also a little kid and being able to figure things out, but not really understanding. And they do that several times, but I think that was the best example of it.
It also continued all the Christ imagery connected with the character.
Right.
I think, Toby, that there is some Christ analogies here with the character. She has, you know, mysterious parentage. She is, you know...
It's like the hero in any story.
Well, yeah, but she also has, for lack of a better term, magical powers. And then we see her dying and coming back to life in different ways over and over again, including in the last scene when she sacrifices her queen in order for this very complicated move. Like, we'll talk about that later.
Yeah. Well, I do want to turn to the other big theme of the series, which is addiction. And it plays out with a lot of characters. We have her as Beth as a little girl in the orphanage becoming addicted to pills. We have her being adopted by these very complicated parents, and in particular, her adoptive mother, who is an alcoholic. That's telegraphed early and often.
Did you ever think maybe it's the drinking that's making you sick?
Oh, please. I've flirted with alcohol most of my life. If anything, I think it's high time I consummated the relationship.
In contrast, I'm curious what you think, Lara and Toby, in contrast to the way that Beth's relationship with alcohol is played out in the series, I think the mother's relationship with alcohol is actually done well. And it actually feels contemporary and it feels relevant to me. What did you think, Lara?
Yeah, because I think that the mother is really portrayed as what, you call like a functioning alcoholic, or, she's not somebody that you're seeing get to this like blackout, roll around sort of stage. She's kind of a maintenance drinker. I did think it was interesting that only the women seem to be portrayed as like alcoholics and having addictions in this show.
Yeah.
And I was wondering if that's sort of like a sign of the times. They're sort of stereotyping that, women at home and then this is how they're coping with things. But, I think that the mother definitely came across to me as sympathetic as she went on, because she became invested in Beth's chess career. But she clearly still struggled with her own reliance on, you see her on the plane and she's like tapping, get me another one. We're in the restaurant. And even when she, offers Beth that first drink, it was portrayed differently, because like when you see Beth going to the level where she is saving her pills. So she's not like maintaining, she's like saving them for the big high, because she perceives in the beginning that that's the only way that she can see these chess moves on the ceiling when she's at that particular stage. So it seems like, she feels like she can't function without those pills. I feel like she feels like her genius is because of those, when actually her genius was there all along. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. And that's not an atypical sort of like artist story. But Toby, what did you think about the alcohol plot? Because I know you had some issues with it.
The alcohol plot I thought was pretty lazy. It almost just kind of felt like it was, you just seen it again and again and again. It's the same thing. It's, something happens, she hits rock bottom, a friend from the past comes and kind of pulls her up, and then she pulls her shit together and goes and conquers the world. But it doesn't play out in any way that is in any way unpredictable or has a whole lot of resonance in the rest of the plot. To be quite honest, there's a whole section there where it's like, what does this mean? Like, why are we watching this? How is this advancing the plot in any way? I thought a more interesting sort of substance abuse thing was what Lara was just talking about, which is that she takes these pills and then they help her focus and sort of see the chess moves and that's
hallucinate, basically hallucinating chess pieces on the ceiling.
Well, I guess, if you're taking it literally, I couldn't tell if you're supposed to take it literally, or is it just that's a metaphor for her being able to like have clarity of thought about chess. But regardless, like even when she's drinking herself into blackouts all the time, there's no sense that she's actually an addict. She just drinks way too much. You don't see her going through withdrawal or really even struggling with it. She just kind of pulls herself together and goes to Russia and wins. Like there's no, and it's the same thing with the pills. Like you never see her in withdrawal from the pills or like desperate to get her pills.
When she was 10.
Yeah.
Yeah, but she shows up and then, like my mom's got them and I can just steal some from her. And so it keeps going. And, I think there's something interesting there about, how dependent upon those drugs is she actually? Like, is it a psychological dependence, or does it really help her? Because when you're that young and that's helping you, to me, I think it's a big leap to say they're not actually helpful, that's a psychological dependence. So at the end, when she like flushes them all down the toilet and, then goes ahead and beats the guy who's the best in the world, it seemed a little bit too pat to me. And it seemed like they were kind of shying away from the real implications of what was going on there. And if the whole thing was that it was just a crutch for her, isn't there some kind of negative to throwing away the crutch at the one time when you most need it?
Yeah.
And the answer in this is no. She just shows up and like fucking kicks ass. And it's like she never needed them in the first place. So I don't know. All that stuff seemed, I hate to say not thought through very well, but it just didn't seem.
It wasn't believable.
Yeah, it wasn't believable. It didn't exploit the possibilities for how it could have been interesting. It was just like, oh, okay, well, we got to go through the drug. You got to do through the thing where she's going to be drunk, but she'll pull it together at the end. I'm sure it's not going to end like this.
Kevin, I'm curious what you think about Beth's relationship with all the men that sort of play varying roles in her life. We've got mentors.
You mean different pawns?
Competitors.
That she's willing to sacrifice in order to continue her attack across the board to her goal.
Yeah. I get it. You've got some metaphors going on.
There's a lot of symbolism in this if you look for it.
But first we have Bill Camp as Mr. Scheibel.
Love Bill Camp, by the way.
No.
We last saw him most prominently in The Night of.
Yes, we've seen him in so many things.
Yeah.
And he's married to, of course, Elizabeth Marvel, great actress who's in so many things. But then we also have
By the way, today a girl could not be alone in a basement with a custodian for hours on end without somebody looking into that.
True. We have the men who admire her from afar, like the Russian champ, Vasily Borgov, who's very intimidated by her, yet plans to beat her in a very strategic way. We have, of course, Benny, played by the kid from Love Actually.
I know. Why can't he grow a mustache? Isn't he grown up now?
Thomas Brody Sangster wearing Indiana Jones costume throughout the documentary, and apparently the only good sex she ever has. We have Henry, the former champ. We have the twins.
Dudley Dursley.
Yes, that's right. That's Henry, right? As Dursley. Yep. So basically what happened throughout the series is that these men play the alternating roles of mentor or foil, like mentor, foil, mentor, foil, mentor, foil. And she sort of, they have varying degrees of importance, and usually she ends up sort of overtaking them. But at the end, and this is what I think is really interesting, with the theme of communism in mind, and what she learns from the Russians is they become her team. She sort of is like rallying the troops.
Is the lesson communism,
yes,
or is it teamwork?
Well, that's how the Russians do it, Kevin. It's communism.
Yeah, they team up. They support one another.
It's communism.
As she has learned that you cannot go it alone all the time.
This is the lesson she learns from the little boy that she plays in the best game of her life up to that point.
Yeah.
He teaches her that they do it that way.
Okay, if you see communism,
anyway,
who am I to say it's not about communism?
But her, like, the dreamy guy shows up to be her second. Like, that's just an accepted thing. It's that you don't, like, you do have help.
Yes.
Yeah, it's not cheating or anything, but
it's not cheating.
But there's so much about her that changes at the end.
Well, let me just
that's important.
Let me just put a nail in this and explain to you why I feel this way.
All right.
There's a theme in this film about American exceptionalism versus communism, where in the United States, you have like the stars, right? And Beth is competing. She's traveling around, and there isn't a sense of like, you get help from other people. We're all equal. You go, you win, you take the next thing. And we see that in Russia, you become a champion with lots of help. We see those guys standing around in that hotel ballroom playing Beth's game, all talking to each other about how to beat her, even though she's playing multiple guys and they're all in that room together.
Okay, well, let's start with his knight to rook 4. We push that king-knight pawn. You got that?
Yes.
Great. We'll pass you back to Harry.
Okay, there are 3 things you might do now. So after the queen to knight 3, you play knight to king 6.
And then it's not about exceptionalism because they agree you're the champ, and then at some point you're not the champ anymore and it's someone else's turn to be the champ. That's where I land on the themes of American exceptionalism versus communism. Lara, what do you think?
Well, see, I saw it differently. I saw it that, having been an orphan, her mother gets in the car crash and dies. She goes to the orphanage. She's been on her own. And as a child that grew up, basically making her own way, she had to do everything for herself. So I think for me, I saw it as when she finally realizes that she has people that are going to be there for her and not abandon her, as her parents did in this group of sort of misfit chess helpers. And when she recognizes that, oh, it's okay, the other people work together, it was like she finally came to this place where she was able to take help, and it wasn't a sign of weakness. And it was something that, she hadn't been able to do until that point because she had really been on her own.
Toby, what are your thoughts?
Well, I guess a couple of things is, one is like when you're talking before about American individualism versus communist cronyism, part of it is that this is based on very, very loosely, but the concept, and I think the author has talked about, is based on Bobby Fischer, who was, similar, sort of an iconoclastic American prodigy who went up against Boris Spassky, who was the best of this Soviet machine. Of the way it played out was a lot different, although Fischer won and was actually a genuinely disturbed and eventually super unpleasant guy. It's a little bit hard to figure out for me, because in some ways it just seemed like a feel-good ending where, all these people who were sort of at one time rivals, and then in a couple of cases lovers, and then like certainly sort of inferiors to her, and her coming to the point where she can accept that support. And, it's not really humility. My kind of take on it was that she sees this guy, Borgov, who's the best. He sees some value in listening to his inferiors, and she does that too. So I don't know. I thought about that some, and then I also just thought, well, maybe this is just a feel-good thing. Like, it's fun to have all these people who you've seen like strewn out along the course of these episodes. She starts off with the twins, and then the Kentucky state champion and stuff, and to see them all like helping around and then jumping around and high-fiving each other and stuff like that. I think there's sort of a cathartic end, and also sort of plays into what you were saying, which is like, it's not like completely realistic. Like, I don't think you're supposed to look at it as being, this could have actually happened. There's sort of a dreamlike quality to quite a bit of it.
There are some shows that we as the audience might not be 100% familiar with the skill that's going on. Like, we may not know an awful lot about chess or soccer or ballroom dancing or whatever, but it's because part of the process, the hero's journey, is learning the skill. We learn it too, but we are drawn not by the game, but by the human drama of the pursuit. So the realism believes of a very authentic world for us. And I think that one of the things I wanted to talk about, just to point out, like, all the different symbolism that is visually throughout this. I mean, obviously, it might have been a little heavy-handed for her first period at her first chess match. I mean, I think it's a little too much. Oh, you're a woman now. Wink, wink on the nose.
I just wanted to tell you that I've never seen anything like. Do you have something?
It's my first time.
Listen, I had my first period at my mother's wedding. What does that make you? It happens.
I get
shit
it happens. But look, if you look at it, I mean, her couture is awesome, right? But when you look at it, there are checkerboard patterns and diamond patterns in the decor all over the place, in her dresses, her silhouette or her dresses. She's shaped like a queen's piece. There's a lot of two-tone color, like a checkerboard would be. It's really well thought out. And the thing at the end that I was mentioning was that in her last game, and all the different chess boards are different. The pieces some are very fancy and some are very rugged. You might remember that queen she was playing white, and it had a black colored tip. Mm-hmm. It was the only piece. So it tells the audience this is important, and because it's the queen anyway. So she opens with the Queen's Gambit, which is a chess opening. What she does at the end to win is she does a very aggressive move where she sacrifices her queen, which is something, she does a trade piece where she gives up her queen. But what she's actually doing when she makes that move is, you see, the next thing that she does is she moves her pawn all the way across to the back row where she gets a new queen, right? So when you put it together, she has gone full circle in her journey where she has discarded her old self and achieved a new womanhood.
Lara, more superficially, can you just give me your 1 to 10 ranking on the clothing, decor, and overall set design and art direction of this amazingly beautiful series, The Queen's Gambit?
Yeah, I'm going to go with 8.5 because that was awesome. The clothes, the music. I've heard people tell me that the reason they started watching this is because they heard like the soundtrack on Spotify or something. And, it was just awesome. All of the period pieces. I think the nostalgia.
We just talked about the period piece.
Oh, stop it.
Okay.
Yeah, the nostalgia of the era that this happened in. Besides, Are You There, God? It's Me, Margaret.
That was, by the way, a great menstruation scene when she's in the bathroom and she's just like asking the other girl, like, what do I do? So exactly on the nose in like many, many ways. Every woman watching this realizes.
You don't think it was an extra level of benign neglect from the parental figures in her life?
No, she was in an orphanage.
Yeah, that's what I mean.
Bill Camp wasn't teaching her about pads in the basement.
We're agreeing with one another.
All right, let's do what we do. Let's let our listeners know, should they check out The Queen's Gambit on Netflix if they have not already? Thumbs up or thumbs down? Lara Bricker, what do you think?
Thumbs up. This was, once I posted on social media that I had watched this, and it seemed like everybody in my orbit has watched this and loved this. Some of them have watched it twice. This was the most fun thing that I've watched in a long time. There was definitely a section, though, towards the middle where it did start to blend together. I'm like, we're at another tournament. The mom's drinking again. We're on another airplane. But you know what? In the end, it was all worth it. It was really interesting. It was really different than anything else I've watched. If you ever told me I'd be watching a chess show and be like on the edge of my seat wanting to know what happens next, I wouldn't believe it. It was great.
Toy Ball, what about you? Thumbs up or thumbs down for The Queen's Gambit on Netflix?
So first of all, I want to endorse Kevin's take on the end. I did not pick up on that at all, but I think that's right on. I thought that was good.
He was watching carefully.
I was watching carefully, yeah.
Yeah. So my advice for people, I'll give it a thumbs up, and after you watch it, go and listen to like a minute and a half ago and get Kevin's take on it, because I thought it was good. I didn't love it as much as some people did. I think the parts that are good are really, really good. And if it had been maybe 2 episodes shorter, and again, I don't want to give out much, but if you listen to before, and there's some stuff I think that didn't really work and wasn't up to the quality of the rest of it. But that being said, it's entertaining, and there are parts of it that are like well above most other shows. I give it a thumbs up with those caveats.
Kevin Flynn.
I'm a thumbs up. I think Joseph Campbell would really love this story because it follows his classic hero's journey. It's a story of a special woman who meets a master who teaches her a skill, and she sets off on a journey into a new world. She goes down to the pits of despair, faces her challenges, and then rises up to achieve her goal and return to the normal world.
But when did she find out that Darth Vader's her father?
Well, it's along the way. Although that's a good question if we ever find out about the father. Look, anyway, you don't have to know anything about chess. Just be willing to go in and watch this amazing actress move some pieces around. You don't have to know what a rook is or what the castling is all about. It's just fun to watch her on this journey.
All right, so I love The Queen's Gambit. It's weird. It's imperfect. The performances are outstanding. We've talked a lot about Anya Taylor-Joy, but I also want to give a shout out to Isla Johnson, who plays young Beth Harmon, who is an incredible, incredible child actor. This show is uneven. It's weird. It combines many things that could make it total garbage. It tries to do a whole lot with a series of sort of strange, hyper-real scenes and hyper-real characters, hyper-real clothing, hyper-real competition, hyper-real travel. It doesn't matter. I loved it. Incredibly entertaining series, really compelling. And I love something that surprises me. And over again in The Queen's Gambit, there'd be a scene that I would think was going one way, and then it would make a 180-degree turn and go a completely different way, or just buck expectations in some other surprising way. So big thumbs up for me for The Queen's Gambit. I really can't recommend it highly enough.
Want the same expert advice you get from the pros in the store while shopping online at discounttire.com? Meet Treadwell, your personal online tire guide that matches you with the perfect tire for your vehicle. Get your best match in 1 minute or less with Treadwell by Discount Tire.
the friendship is sharing deal.
Because I want one of your McNuggets.
And I need some of your Quarter Pounder.
There's a deal for everyone at McDonald's. Get one favorite like 10-piece chicken McNuggets, a Quarter Pounder, or a Big Mac and get another for just $1. Price and participation may vary. Valid for item of equal or lesser value.
Luxury is meant to be livable. Discover the new leather collection at Ashley with premium quality leather sofas, recliners, and more, all built to last. No matter how many spills, scuffs, or pet-related mishaps come its way, the leather collection at Ashley is made with the durability you need for the whole family. Shop the new leather collection at Ashley and find chairs starting at $499.99 and sofas at $599.99. Ashley, for the love of home.
Now it's time for my favorite part of the podcast, a little something I like to call the crime of the week. The FBI was hot on the tail of a Ponzi scheme mastermind, pinning him down on the shore of Lake Shasta in California. That's when Matthew Piercy pulled something from his truck, dove in, and disappeared under the water. Officials say Piercy tried to get away on a sea scooter. It's a handheld submersible vehicle that helps divers chug along at a blistering 4 miles an hour.
Wow.
Agents stood on the shore watching a trail of bubbles and waited 25 minutes for their fugitive to resurface. Before his attempted escape in the mini submarine, authorities had called Piercy a, quote, flight risk.
You think?
He and his partner are accused of bilking $35 million from investors and face 20 years in prison. After a massive spending spree, prosecutors say almost none of the money is left, meaning everyone involved is, financially speaking, underwater. So, panel, here's my question for you. Evading arrest via handheld submarine sounds more like an escape the Joker or Lex Luthor would make. What other clues were there? This guy might be a supervillain. What do you think, Lara Bricker?
I don't know. The fact that his thing only went 4 miles an hour, I just don't even think he's close to being a supervillain. All I can think of is that he is like that guy. Did you guys ever watch Phineas and Ferb?
Yeah.
The guy who was the supervillain in that. It was like Dr. Duffeldorf or something. Like, that's about the level of supervillain. Oh my God. Phineas and Ferb. That same kid is in it. Ferb. What the hell? Ferb is Thomas Brody Sangster from the Queen's Gambit.
The kid from actually, who never grows up?
Apparently he was Ferb.
That kid's like
Does Ferb
50
have
now.
a weird mustache too?
No. Oh my God. Wow. Okay.
Toby Ball, what other clues were there that this underwater submarine scooter guy might actually be a supervillain?
He had some fancy pajamas underneath his clothes.
What do you think, Kevin Flynn?
Well, he spent all that money on that hollowed out lair from the on the island with the giant mountain, and he dug a hole in, and he had sharks with frickin' lasers. Laser. I just want some frickin' sharks with laser beams, people.
You know how I know he's a supervillain?
How?
Monologuing.
Monologue.
All right. We should probably end it on that note. But before we do, Lara Bricker, do we have a cat of the week this week?
Oh, yes, we do. But first, we have 2 cats of the week this week. I would like to give a shout out to people that are joining my orange cat cult because it's growing.
Nice.
My world dominance in orange cats is growing. So Deanna at Lemonberry32 just got Jam, a 6-month-old kitten who was an adorable orange cat. And also, I love it when we get these emails from people who send us pictures and give us a whole story. Leslie Henderson Craig, who wrote to us from New Zealand, which is awesome.
Very far away.
She says we are bloody fabulous, which...
Yes.
Thank you. Thank you, Leslie. She's telling me about Mittens. It's not her cat, but he is a Wellington, New Zealand celebrity cat. Apparently he just wanders around and wanders in places. He's a phenomenon. He's beloved by the city, covers a fair bit of territory, and causes big excitement when he decides to settle in your workplace, car, or home. And so he has a whole Facebook page. You can follow his travels. And she took a picture because he visited her workplace, which is 4 levels up and is swipe card only access. And somehow he got in.
So I have a question about your email from Leslie from New Zealand.
Yes.
Did she send it tomorrow, but you got it yesterday?
What?
That's how I always think whenever you were like, have you ever communicated with somebody like in Australia or New Zealand? It's like 2 days later when they're talking to you.
Well, it was actually sent in last week and I saved it for this week. So
it sent in last week, but it was actually the week after. She actually meant to send it because they're so time distorted there down under. Anyway, Leslie, thank you for writing in, and please tell your friends in New Zealand to listen to our podcast. We need some more Kiwi fans. All right, Lara Bricker, people want to send their submissions to you for Cat of the Week. Besides meeting you on our Facebook discussion group, how can they find you on Twitter?
At Lara Bricker.
And Toby Ball, folks want to reach out to you and say, hey, Toby Ball, how can they find you on Twitter?
At Toby Ball NH.
Toby, I promise no one else will tell you that you bear a resemblance to that one photograph of John Mulligan ever again. You don't actually look like him. You just look like that one photo of him.
I was trying to figure out what that was all about. But
I think I'll take care of that.
Kevin Flynn, if folks want to reach out to you and tell you to get a haircut, how can they find you on Twitter?
I'm at Kevin P. Flynn.
And if you want to follow me on Twitter or Instagram, you can find me at Reb Lavoie. You can also follow the show on Twitter at Crime Writers On. And I encourage you to join our amazing community in our official Crime Writers On Facebook discussion group. We also have a regular old Facebook page, by the way. Support the show at patreon.com/Partners in Crime Media. You'll get the Crime Writers On After Show, Married with Podcast, Toby Ball's Deep Dive Book Club podcast, and Lara Bricker's Leave It to Bricker podcast. Kevin, how many episodes are there behind our Patreon firewall?
No, more than 150.
So much content. Our theme song was composed and performed by Ty Gibbons. Our line editor is the very handsome Olivia Burdett. This show was recorded in the Ogle Loft above the Bodega in Bay St. Louis, Mississippi studio, otherwise known as Studio C, the closet in our New Hampshire basement, where we teach orphans how to play chess. On behalf of all the crime writers, thanks so much for listening. We will catch you
later.
Happy
Thanksgiving.
Lara Bricker, this is a documentary that has a sport at its center. The Sport of Kings.
It's not a documentary.
I'm sorry. Lara, this is a series.
I thought it was a documentary.
No, I don't think it was. I used that word.
They had great access.
I used that word wrong.
So much color film for 1950.
We were just talking about a documentary.
All right, sorry. Yeah.
Partners in Crime Media.
Luxury is meant to be livable. Discover the new leather collection at Ashley with premium quality leather sofas, recliners, and more, all built to last. No matter how many spills, scuffs, or pet-related mishaps come its way, the leather collection at Ashley is made with the durability you need for the whole family. Shop the new leather collection at Ashley and find chairs starting at $499.99 and sofas at $599.99. Ashley, for the love of home.